Hey folks, today I'm looking at emergency backup generators, in particular the Westinghouse iGen2200. So I live in Florida. I'm not exactly in a hurricane hotspot. I'm about 5 miles or so from the ocean. I'm not in a floodplain. I'm not in an evacuation zone. However, we do get hit by storms every once in a while, and they occasionally cause power events here. So for the most part, those power events have been minor, and if it does look like there's an extended, multiple day power outage or something like that, we have a friend or a hotel that we can always go to. So while we've teetered with the idea of getting a generator in the past, it just never quite seemed like a worthwhile investment. But now with the pandemic, the idea of going out into public and either staying at a hotel or even a friend's house, that worthwhile investment math has changed. So the first step in selecting a generator is trying to figure out how big of a generator you need. Now generators come in all shapes and sizes. You can get a permanent installation, very large generator that automatically kicks on when your power goes out. You can get a transfer switch, so you can plug in like a mid-sized generator to power some of the circuits in your house. Or you can get a small portable generator, and whatever you want powered off the generator, you have to plug into the generator. And that's about the level of investment that we were looking for. So a couple of years ago, we did have what I would call a pretty significant power event. A storm came through that wasn't that bad. It didn't cause a lot of damage or anything like that. However, it did wash out some power lines that serviced my neighborhood. And I was without power for about 5 days. That means no refrigeration, all our food spoiled. That means no home internet. That means no electricity for lights or fans or anything like that. And I did stay in the house for about 3 of them. Now, in addition to not having power, that storm also knocked out our cell tower. So we did not have cell service at my house either. So without internet, we don't have home phone service. And without cell, I had no way of communicating for those 3 days that I was stuck in this house, unless I got in my car and drove out to where I could get cell service. So that unfortunate event really highlighted the things that are essential for survival in a power outage situation. So all generators advertise a peak and a running wattage. Now, a generator should be able to run and supply its running wattage indefinitely. As long as it has fuel and oil, it should be able to supply the running wattage. It'll only be able to supply the peak wattage for a few seconds before it's overloaded and shuts off. And the reason for that is that things with motors in them, they have additional power requirements to overcome the inertia and get started. But once they're spinning, they will only consume their running wattage. And that peak wattage can be 3 times what the running wattage is. So it's a significant additional power requirement. So the way you size a generator is you add up all of the wattages for all the devices that you plan to connect, and then you buy a generator with a bigger number than that. Now, if you added up all the peaks, you could end up sizing a generator that's 2 or 3 times what you actually need. The idea is that only one device is going to peak at a time, so you don't need to buy a generator that can handle all of them peaking at the same time. Now, it may seem like a good idea to have quite a bit of extra overhead, so if multiple devices do start up at the same time, your generator can handle it. However, when you buy a bigger generator, it's heavier and more difficult to manage. It's louder, it uses more fuel, and it's more expensive. While some additional overhead is okay, something that isn't too big is a good idea. So while many devices will tell you their wattage up front, it's a good idea to get a device like this. The popular brand name for these is a kilowatt. However, there are many different watt meters that you can buy on Amazon at much lower prices. This is a BNA link, and all this device does is that you plug this device into the wall, plug the device you want to measure into it, and then when you turn it on, it will tell you the wattage being used on the LCD screen. Now, these are great for determining running wattages, but they're not so great at peak wattages. The reason is peak wattages come and go very quickly, and this LCD does not update very quickly. So in the second that it takes this LCD to update, you may have peaked and already come back down, or you may be only halfway to peak, or you may be coming down from the peak already. These things are not super reliable for measuring peak wattage. There is a rule of thumb, though. If you have a device with a motor in it that has some additional startup requirements, generally you want to multiply the running wattage times 3 for those devices and assume that's your peak wattage. So for my purposes, I know that I wanted to run a small outdoor refrigerator we have in our garage. That refrigerator uses 380 watts when it's running, so 1040 watts to start up. Now I know I wanted to be able to run a small fan. There's no way I could run an air conditioning unit. Air conditioning requires a lot of wattage, and unless you have a small RV style air conditioner or something like that, you're not going to run it off of a portable generator. But I would like to run a fan. The small fan I have measured about 40 watts running, so 120 watts at its peak. I'm definitely going to need light. We have LED bulbs in the house. A 60 watt equivalent LED bulb uses about 8.5 watts, so I'm going to add in 20 watts for lights. Now, my wife and I both have laptops that we would definitely need to use in a power outage situation. Luckily, most laptops list the wattage right on the power brick. Her laptop uses 60 watts. My laptop has a travel adapter that uses 90 watts. So we're at 150 watts for our laptops. So finally, we have an assortment of small electronics that we would like to use on occasion during a power outage. Things like phone chargers, our cable modem and our wireless router, maybe a TV once in a while. I didn't take the time to measure each of those devices individually, and it's likely that they're not going to be used simultaneously anyway. But I did add in 300 watts for luxury items. So with everything running, I'm at 890 running watts. Now, the worst case scenario should be when the refrigerator kicks on and everything else is already running. So I'm going to use the 1040 starting watts from the fridge and then 590 total running watts from all the other devices. That gives me 1650 starting watts. Now, real life doesn't always match what you planned for, so it's always a good idea to give yourself a little bit of overhead. I went ahead and added 20% to my calculations to give me 1068 running watts or 1980 starting watts. As long as I select a generator that exceeds those numbers, I should be good. So now I am planning for emergency usage for just bare necessities for me and my wife. We also have gas appliances, so I can cook or heat water without using any electricity. Now, your appliance makeup, your family size, your expectations of luxury will almost definitely differ from mine. So don't just use my numbers. Do your own math, come up with your own sheet, and make your own decision for your generator wattage. With power requirements in hand, I can start narrowing my generator selection. I know I wanted something small and portable. I wasn't going to wire into the house, but even small portable generators have a lot of different configurations and options. There are two main considerations. The first is fuel type. I know I wanted a gasoline-fueled generator that uses the same fuel that you put into your vehicles. I already have other gasoline-powered tools, so I already keep gasoline in my garage. In worst-case scenario, I could siphon it out of a vehicle if I had to. Now, that's not your only option. You can also get generators that are powered off of propane, the same white tanks that you use for a propane grill, or even diesel, although diesel is usually reserved for larger, more industrial-style generators. There are even generators that can be powered by multiple different fuels. Usually it's a gas and propane dual-fuel generator. But for me, as long as it took gas, I was going to be satisfied. The second major consideration is whether you need an inverter generator or not. And that's going to be a bit of a discussion. The electricity coming out of a standard outlet in a home in the United States is 120 volt alternating current at 60 Hz. That means that at any given time, the current on the hotline can be positive 120 volts or negative 120 volts, and it alternates between positive and negative and back to positive again 60 times per second. The steady rhythm of power rising to 120 volts, falling to neutral, and then negative 120 volts before rising at the exact same pace again, is represented by a sine wave. The peaks of this wave represent 120 volts and the valleys negative 120 volts. The way a generator works is that a fueled motor spins a shaft. That shaft then spins an alternator. An alternator is basically a large magnet inside a ring of wire windings. The change in magnetism in the windings as the magnet spins past them is what generates electricity. The speed of rotation and the size and spacing of the windings determine how quickly it alternates between positive and negative voltages. Since the load on the generator influences the speed of the motor, the rate the power alternates between positive and negative may not be consistent. The output of the alternator is fed through a voltage regulator, which ensures that the voltages and the timings are somewhat close to what you'd get from a wall outlet.
Producing sine wave power with smoothly increasing and decreasing voltages with the exact right timing is difficult, so instead they put out a simpler stepped wave often called a modified sine wave. The power in a modified sine wave roughly follows the sine wave pattern, however even the modified wave can be difficult given the potential rapid variation in power coming out of the alternator. So this modified sine wave often ends up as a very rough approximation of the wave. In short, this is dirty power. Now, while most electrically powered devices don't require extremely clean power, some devices, in particular electronics, can refuse to operate or even be damaged or destroyed if the power deviates too much from a pure sine wave. Enter the inverter generator. An inverter generator is similar to a regular generator, however, instead of pushing the voltage regulated power straight out to an outlet, they instead convert that dirty power to direct current. The converted direct current feeds a capacitor that acts like a filter, consuming the somewhat erratic dirty power and putting out clean, consistent DC voltage. That consistent DC voltage is then converted to AC power using complex timing circuitry that can ensure a clean sine wave transition from positive to negative voltage, eliminating the risk of damage to electronics.
As an added benefit, since the output power sine wave is decoupled from the rate of the alternator, an inverter generator can lower its engine speed under lighter load, saving fuel and operating more quietly. So there's a bit of stratification in the portable inverter generator market. You'll find a number of generators that are in the 1,000 to 1,200 watt range, and then you'll find quite a few that are in like the 3,000 to 3,500 watt range. But the vast majority of portable inverter generators are going to be in this 2,000 watt segment. And there's honestly not a lot of differentiation between them. You'll see similar shapes and sizes, similar control panels, similar options from various manufacturers in this 2,000 watt inverter generator market. So Honda and Yamaha are the high water marks for generators in this segment. They make the best, the most reliable 2,000 watt inverter generators. But I cannot bring myself to spend $1,000 on a small portable generator that I might use every couple of years. A $400 Generac or a $400 Westinghouse generator is not going to have the reliability or longevity of a Honda or a Yamaha. I gladly cede that point. I am going to say that Westinghouse, Wen, Generac, Predator, Ryobi, they make a good generator. It's sufficiently reliable. It has a decent warranty. It's going to be good enough for an occasional emergency backup situation. So if you have the means and you are looking for a daily use generator for critical applications, then yeah, get a Honda or a Yamaha. If you're looking for something to throw in the garage and fire up every few months to make sure it works for that occasional storm every other year, then any of these brands are probably going to be okay. So why did I choose the Westinghouse then? To be honest, it was the one that was on sale. It met all my requirements. This thing has 1,800 running watts, 2,200 peak, so plenty of overhead for my power needs. It runs very quiet. They advertise 55 decibels. 60 decibels is a conversation at 3 feet, so you should be able to talk to somebody else standing a few feet from this thing and not have to raise your voice. It's lightweight. It only weighs about 46 pounds, so I can throw it on a shelf or even drag it up into the attic if I want to get it out of the way. Now, this generator doesn't have any of the fancy features. You'll find generators in this segment that have app control, that have remote start, that have fuel gauges, that kind of thing. So it is somewhat of a bare bones model, but at that price, it's hard to beat. Most generators in this segment are in like the 400 to 450 range, sometimes stretching up to $500-600. So to find this guy for $360 was kind of a steal. Now, I would have been happy with pretty much any of the brands that I mentioned before. They all pretty much are the same generator. They probably even share a lot of the same parts. It just happened that this Westinghouse was on sale at the time. So I've moved this operation outside. I'm standing just outside the door to my garage in the backyard. There's not any neighbors or any road access or anything here, so it's a nice secure location. The refrigerator that I would power with this generator is on the other side of this wall, so that's a good location for that, and then we can run extension cords into the house for anything else that we'd like to run. So this is where it's likely going to sit if we were to have some kind of power outage event. So here's everything you're going to get in the box. You get the generator itself, enough oil to fill it once, a couple of tools, a funnel to help fill the oil, and the instruction manual. And then I have some fuel that's about 2 gallons of gasoline. It's ethanol free and it's treated with stable.
The generator is a bold blue color with a removable panel on the right side for maintenance access. There's a small exhaust hole on the back and the pull starter on the left side. On the top, you'll find the fuel fill nozzle and cap that is surrounded by a rubberized drip catcher. Further back, there's an access panel for maintaining the spark plug. The control panel has 3 status LEDs in the top left for oil level, overload, and a ready light. The large knob sets the generator to running or choke settings for startup. There are 2 USB ports for charging devices, as well as 2 120-volt standard AC plugs. In the middle, there's a parallel connection port. Inverter generators have the ability to synchronize their output waveforms so you can combine 2 similar generators and provide double the wattage. Near the bottom, you have a switch for efficiency mode, which will use less fuel and create less noise when power requirements are low. There's a breaker switch to protect against faults in the line, as well as a reset button to re-enable power output after an overload. Finally, there's the ground lug to provide a path to ground for 3-prong plugs. The first step in setting up the generator is to add the engine oil. The oil comes pre-measured and the extra long funnel makes filling easy. You want the generator to sit level while filling, which is why I placed a small bit of wood under one side. I would suggest saving the original oil bottle, as it will make measuring oil for future oil changes simple. Next, you fill the generator with fuel. As mentioned before, using a fuel stabilizer and possibly ethanol-free fuel is a good idea if you're not going to run the generator often. To start the generator, you first need to turn the fuel vent switch to on, turn the running knob to choke, and then pull the starter line. Since this is the first start of this generator, there is no fuel in the line, so it took a few pulls to get it going. Subsequent starts have only taken 1 pull. Once the generator is started, you flip the switch from choke to run and you're ready to connect your load. So that's how it sounds when it's running. They say it should be about as loud as a conversation from 3 to 5 feet away. I'm 3 to 5 feet away, and yeah, that sounds like somebody about the same volume as somebody talking that distance away. I do have a sound meter app on my phone. It's reporting about 68, 69 decibels from this distance. Just talking, I'm spiking up to about 80, 83. So that gives you some idea of how loud it is just standing this distance away. So now I'm inside my garage. I'm right on the other side of the door that you saw earlier. The generator is sitting on a slab right outside that door. The refrigerator that we would power is the one right behind me. The door would normally be cracked just like it is now, because I will have to run an extension cord through it. So this should simulate what the sound would what it would actually sound like in the garage during a power outage. The meter is reading about 48 decibels in here, and it's very quiet. It's not bothersome at all. And again, when I talk, I'm spiking up to the mid-70s or so. So that gives you some idea of how it sounds on the other side of a door. So I've turned on efficiency mode, which is a bit quieter. And again, you can use efficiency mode if you're not really taxing the generator. If you only have, half to maybe 2/3 of a load on it, efficiency mode's great. If you are going to run it heavy, then you need to leave efficiency mode off. With efficiency mode on, standing in about the same place I was at before, I'm down to about 65 decibels. And again, as I'm speaking, it's spiking to the same spot. So it should be relatively accurate. Next, I measured light, medium, and heavy loads, both outside at about 5 feet from the generator and just inside the slightly cracked door where I was standing before. There was practically no discernible volume difference with the generator in efficiency mode, under 400 watts or so. Even with the high wattage draw in efficiency mode off, the generator topped out at just over 75 decibels, which is in the same range as a vacuum cleaner running. Inside the door, everything was quiet. 53 decibels is about as loud as a refrigerator or washing machine running. I checked a couple ratings just past the next door in the living area of the house, and it barely registered over ambient. So in other reviews, everyone always gets a kick out of watching the generator struggle whenever the load is put on it, so here's that.
So there's no big exciting conclusion here. The Westinghouse iGen2200, it was easy to set up. It took the loads that I put on it. It was about as quiet as I expected it to be. It did what I thought it was going to do. And I would guess that any generator in this class from a reputable manufacturer that has a warranty that company will stand by will operate in pretty much the same fashion. So hopefully I'll only need to drag it out every few months to make sure the oil and gas is fresh, and I won't have any hurricanes to deal with in the near future. So let's say you had higher requirements than what I have. 3,000 watt inverter generators are pretty common. You'll spend a few $100s more, but you'll still get the same convenience of size, of quietness, of low fuel consumption at a 3,000 watt generator. Even more versatile, you may want to consider 2 of the 2,000 watt inverter generators. You can pair them when you need this, the high 4,000 watts of output, or you can use them independently. Like maybe it'd be a good idea to have a generator in the garage for the refrigerator, and then a generator in the front yard or something like that for the lights and for the electronics and stuff like that. You can get non-inverter generators of the same or higher capacities for less money. A non-inverter generator is generally quite a bit cheaper than an inverter generator, but you got to be sure that you're not running anything sensitive. It can ruin your electronics or some motor-driven devices. But you're going to save a lot of money on the initial generator purchase. They will be a lot noisier, they will be a lot heavier, and they will use a lot more fuel. So be sure that you're buying the right thing if you choose to go with a non-inverter generator. So if your power requirements are even less than mine, which seems pretty unlikely, you can get an inverter generator in the 1,000 watt neighborhood. And that would be enough if you want to dedicate it to just running a refrigerator or freezer, or dedicate it to just running some lights or something like that. Then maybe that size is good for you, and you'll save a couple $100, and those things will just sip fuel, and they're very quiet as well. So maybe that's the right option for you. Taking even one step down from that, they sell battery-based inverter generators, which aren't really generators. They're just giant glorified battery packs that have an AC inverter on them. And again, for a couple $100, you can get yourself like a 300 watt battery backup system with the AC output, and that'll get you over, small, couple hour power outages to just run laptops or lights or something like that. So that may also be an option worth considering for your need. So whatever you choose, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you maybe found some of the calculations and thought processes useful, if not the actual review of the Westinghouse iGen2200. If you like this video, please hit the like button below. If you liked my other videos, I'd love it if you subscribed, and I will see you next time.